Hey guys, JTX here. Today's going to be kind of a special video, a response to a comment I received on my Bleedbow build. So I got a comment recently about a player saying they tried out the build and they're fairly new to PoE. They played PoE maybe 2.5 years ago and then they came back. So it's been quite a long time. They saw the build that I made and they wanted to try out the Bleedbow build. So the person wrote a comment on my video saying they put about 100 divines to make this build work, but was hitting some roadblocks and some challenges with the build. I'm surprised by this because normally 100 divines, you can almost make any build really, really strong. So they've given me their PoB, and I've confirmed with them just to see if I can review their PoB as almost like an educational video, just have a look at what things I think you should do for a build and how to make it, how to best get value for the currency you are spending into a build. So I'm going to bring up the PoB now for the for this person's character, and we'll have a look at what seems to be the problem with the build and how we can fix that. So this is the build in question. This is a level 88 gladiator, so he's gone the Bleedbow route. If we look at some of the stats here, so for his split arrow, he's about 1.5 million DPS. So make sure we go to configs here. So yep, they've ticked the configs. They've said Guardian Pinnacle Boss. So normally you want to set the setting to Guardian Pinnacle Boss. This gives you your actual DPS on endgame bosses. If you don't tick this, if you go like to no, if you go to a standard boss or to a no boss at all, the numbers will change. Normally you always set it to a Guardian Pinnacle Boss. So we have a couple other things we can look here. So So this is his clearing skill, which is Split Arrow. So he has Split Arrow linked to Awaken Swift Affliction, Vicious Proj, Brutality, Pierce, Cruelty. Let's look at his single target, which should be a Puncture on a snipe. So about 8 million damage if we go to the maximum number of snipe stages. So his actual bleed DPS is about 9.2 million out of a possible, I think 35 million is the deep DOT cap for bleed. So it's respectable damage. They mentioned that they were having trouble with red maps, which should definitely not be the case. This damage is more than enough to easily clear red maps and red bosses. I'm thinking the real problem comes with his defenses. So his effective hit pool is only 8,000, so that's a pretty big no-no. For reference, my own champion build had a hit pool of around 88,000, so it was what 10 times more, had a 10 times larger hit pool than this current build. So I think 8,000 hit pool is very, very little. I think a good benchmark for most builds now, you're looking at 40 to 50k effective hit pool. I think at that point, you'll be considered like, you won't die that much to maps. Only really, really rippy things will kill you. If you're looking at taking on Uber Pinnacles like Uber Eater or Uber Exarch, then you're looking to push that number up to maybe the 80, 90k range. So let's have a quick look at the build itself, see like how this person's designed the character and the gear they've gotten. I'll probably start with their tree first, and then I'll have a look at their gear. This person, okay, so, wow, okay. A couple interesting points here. This person has gone for Iron Reflexes, which converts all evasion rating to armor, but from what I can tell, they don't run any defensive auras. They don't run Determination or Grace. Ideally, in PoE now, almost every single build runs either Grace or Determination or a combination of both with a Defiance banner. All three of those auras give you a crazy amount of evasion and armor respectively. I think if you're not running one of those auras, then you have to have a very specialized build that maybe converts damage from elemental, physical to elemental, or you have some sort of other form of mitigation. But almost other than that, you're always running one of those defensive auras. So one of the quick things I noticed that if you are running Iron Reflexes, there has to be a reason why you're running it. So if you don't have enough armor to justify running, if you don't have enough evasion rating to justify Iron Reflexes or enough armor scaling, this node is essentially useless. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot here because evasion is also a defensive layer. So if you get rid of evasion, you notice that his hit pool does go down. It just means his evasion wasn't a crazy amount, and his armor wasn't a crazy amount. So the main thing I think to fix this skill tree would just be there are a couple of dead nodes and also pathing issues that you can probably resolve here. Obviously, a Resolute Technique is something you need to grab because it's a keystone. For this section here, like I'll kind of take you guys through the process of how you design a skill tree and how you kind of maximize the points you use. So in my own bleed bow passive tree, you notice that I pot down to here for the mana mastery here. So we get the increased reservation efficiency of skills. So that's really, really important for us to reserve more auras. We don't really need mana leech here because we can get that on a piece of jewelry. So that's almost 4 passive points just going for mana leech. We can get that on a single roll on a piece of gear. And also we want sturdy techniques. These are really powerful nodes. The way you can find out whether a node is powerful for your build or not is PoB has a really, really handy tool. So you can click show node power. And this will show you the relative power of each of the nodes for your build. So if I click on offense defense, we don't really care about hit DPS. We care about DOT DPS or bleed DPS. So we click on bleed DPS, and now it's going to show us all the nodes that are really, really good for our build in terms of damage, right? So the more red it is, the more value it gives us for DPS. Now, there are some caveats to that. Some keystones and some other notables might make it seem like a lot, but you kind of have to understand the mechanics for why they use them. Sometimes it's not as good as it seems. So with just these 3 points, if we get these 3 points, that's already 15% more DPS. So if we take these 3 points here, yeah, you can see the DPS jumps up to 10 million already on his single target puncture setup. So this is just a quick guide on if you do want to know what's good for your build. You can use the power, show node power on your tree to find out, hey, this gives me a lot of damage, this doesn't give me that much damage, what's good, what's not good for the build. So I'll turn this off for now, and I'll just go by intuition here about what I think would be good. So also you notice here there's like the way you path the trees. You can just grab 1 point here after we take the bottom and we drop Iron Reflexes. We save a bunch of points. Even this point you could potentially unallocate for another point later, but we'll leave it there for now. This person also grabbed Hard Knocks, probably because they don't have enough intelligence somewhere on their tree if you take it off. Yep, so they require 95 int, so they're using that notable as like a little stat booster. Obviously, we try to fix that on gear, so you get it on your rings, you get it on your accessories, even on your belt potentially, or you can't in this case because you're using Arislathas. And also for this motion here, for these nodes here, we don't really care about mana regeneration on this. I think the reason why this person might have allocated a lot of points into mana leech is because they are having problems with sustaining their mana. There are a couple ways to mitigate this. One of the ways is one of the new life masteries, which makes skills cost mana. 30% of your skill cost life instead of mana. That helps a lot with the sustainment of your attacks and your mana pool. So ideally, we want to go down here and grab these 2 nodes here, and then we don't really want mana flows here. Like it's not really a good use. Also, this we don't benefit from the melee strike range. We don't benefit from the melee physical damage. It's essentially a dead node. We don't want that either. And we also look at the pathing. So like there are definitely ways you can probably optimize the pathing if there's like multiple paths that kind of lead to the same way. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 points here to get to this cluster here, and he's also gone to the left here. It's better you just take these 2 points, then you can save 1, 2, 3, 4 points. I'm trying to do it in a way that this person doesn't have to reallocate too many points. I think the skill tree itself might look really, really different compared to what I would do, but I'm just this is just more like a education experience on like how to really path around your tree effectively, and also how to set up your tree so you don't have to respec so much in the end game. I think the rest of the tree looks pretty decent. I think this is the pretty stock standard start for bleed bow gladiators as champions. Also, you want to grab this reservation efficiency node here. You don't have to get Bannerman. This one's really, really effective because you do want to reserve a bunch of auras here. And at the end of the skill tree rework, I think we could potentially fit in another aura for this person's build. We'll just see how that goes. Yeah, so we go here. So these nodes are all fine. In particularly, there's the other option is instead of going from connecting the tree from this side, you could connect from the life wheel here and connect from the starting point here. That's also an option. They've got some clusters as well. I would caution newer players against using clusters because they do take a lot of skill points to allocate them, and you have to have the right cluster for it to be more valued than your actual passive points. And in particularly, knowing that there's a difference between the number of passive points on a cluster. So if you have 8 passive skills on a cluster, you can grab both notables and then both dual sockets for your mediums. You can do that within 5 points. If you have a passive dual with 9 sockets, so let me just change this from a 8 to a 9, you're going to have to take an extra point just to get the same effect. So if I set this to 9 here, you'll notice that this changes now. So now I have to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you waste an extra passive point if your large cluster dual says 9 passive instead of 8. That's also the same as 10. So if you do want a large cluster dual, normally you aim for 8 passive skills. That way you minimize the amount of point loss. The rest of the passive tree seems to be okay. We just just focus on getting some masteries. This one is not. Yeah, I think that these nodes aren't great because I do notice like you're running the Glorious Vanity, which gives you the Divine Flesh notable, but you haven't taken that notable. The whole point of that notable is, or the whole point of that keystone is to convert the damage you take from Elemental into Chaos. So that gives you actually a crazy amount of defense if you're able to really cap your Chaos res. But in this case, your Chaos res is sitting at 35, so taking this keystone wouldn't be great for you. But I think a lot of other builds do go this path. I talk about this in the video that this is one of the alternate options. The other one is you're going the Elegant Hubris, which is the Parandus one. This is the other alternative that you could potentially tank, but you have to build around this. You have to build a lot of chaos resistance into your gear, and it overall makes your balancing your gear a little bit more difficult. So I personally I could go this way, but I feel like you're trading off a lot of offense to build more chaos res on your gear. These nodes are fine. These are both really good for bleed. You keep getting a huge amount of value from these two nodes. This is all fine as well. Like all these nodes seem to be fine. Like I'd say like the majority of the skill tree is okay. Just a couple of points at the start that had to be kind of rejigged. And then I think these nodes here, these are okay for now. But normally you get rid of them once you swap to a cluster setup. So you could have them, you can not have them. It's completely up to player agency. You can do whatever you want there. All right, so we've kind of fixed their skill tree a little bit. So they're level 74 now. So we've given them an extra 14 points to allocate. So how do we want to allocate these points? Well, if it were me, I think I would give them. You're looking for both more defense and more offense, right? And also some reservation efficiency. So how we can do that is obviously you can also anoint your gear. I'll get to that in a bit. I'll see what I can do here to kind of use these points effectively. So we can go back to show node power again. And then we can do a power report. So this actually tells you how much bleed DPS you're going to get for each point relative to like how many nodes it's going to take. So we can sort by per point. So we can see that these two nodes will give us an average of 300,000 DPS per point. So obviously you want to grab these two. Then we look at the next one. Should be Bannerman. So Bannerman's also good. Yeah, so Bannerman is also effective node as well because it gives us additional damage for very cheap cost. So it's 1 point for another 254k damage. And also here, so this is one of the other nodes. It's really good for bleed bow. It gives you movement speed, DOT. It gives you evasion rating and increased damage. So I think we'll take this as well. So how many points do we have? We have 5 more points to work with. So now that we've kind of like boosted up the damage back to 10 million. We have like maybe what 5 more points to try to get some defenses here. I think we could go for some more life here, so we can just potentially grab these 4 points. You really want to push your life pool up because if your life pool is very low, it doesn't matter how much defense you really build because you're not protecting much. You want to have a decent life pool and a decent defense, a mix of both. You can't have too much life with no defense. You can't have too much defense with no life because then you're not really protecting much life. It's not a lot of value. I think we have one more point here, so maybe we get a mount, like we get a mastery here somewhere. So masteries are really powerful because they do give you really powerful effects. For example, this gives 50 life from this mastery. You can grab skill cost life instead of 30% of mana cost. This is really effective for helping you sustain your mana hits, sustain your attacks. And obviously, I think like this tree would be a little bit better than what the person's currently done. So this is only one part. This is just the skill tree. So we're at 4,000 life now. Our DPS is a little bit higher, and now our hit pulls are basically the same. So in just a quick few changes, I've increased the DPS, I've increased the life, and I think the hit pool is about the same. So now I want to go into the gearing options just to see how we can make the character a little bit stronger. So straight up, first thing I notice is Sorrow of the Divine, life recovery from fossils applied to energy shield, and also use Zealot's Oath during effect. So let's go and look at what Zealot's Oath does. So Zealot's Oath is life regeneration also applies. Life regeneration is applied to energy shield instead. So what that means is when you're clicking that flask, you're turning off your life regen and giving it to energy shield, and you have a total of 96 energy shield. So you're pretty much getting rid of your 142 life regen and effectively deleting it. You're not getting any value from your energy shield either. So this flask isn't great. Potentially they might have saw that I was using a sulfur flask, or I was using other builds might have using the bottled faith or a similar type of flask, and they thought, okay, sulfur flask, unique sulfur flask is good. You don't really want this. This kind of it's kind of pointless for the build. It does more damage to the build than it actually helps. You could just run a regular magic sulfur flask, and that would actually be better than running a Sorrow of the Divine. Yep, so we're going to add a sulfur flask here. This gives consecrated ground on use, so a bit of regen when you stand on it, also a bit of more damage. I don't get too much about the prefix suffixes yet on it, but we'll just add the flask in for now. We'll tick on all the flasks. Effective hit pool about 12,000. Definitely not enough for hitting red maps. I'm looking through the flasks now. So they have an armor flask, which is granite, and they have a jade flask, which is for evasion. Ideally, on your armor flask and your evasion flask, you want to roll it so you get increased armor during the flask effect and increased evasion during the flask effect, respectively, for each one of those flasks. Those actually give you a huge boost in the amount of evasion / armor that you do get. So I do recommend that you guys try roll your flasks. They're one of the easier things to roll in the game, just to get those effective defensive mods on your flask. We'll go through the other pieces of gear now. So his bow, decent. It's obviously a Crucible League bow. It's got about 580 Fizz DPS. Ideally, you aim for a little bit higher, but the rolls on the weapon itself are pretty insane. You've got bleeding, you deal fixed damage 27% faster, 56% DOT modifier for bleeding. Like this is a good item. Okay, this is fine. Like a bow like this will take you all the way to the end game. You don't really need to change this. I think his quiver is good as well. His quiver is also double DOT multi with life, and yeah, this is almost a quad damage roll. A quad damage roll with life, fantastic. Assailum, I think Assailum is okay for more budget-focused bleed bow builds. I personally don't like the fact that you lose your helmet slot to get 2 extra snipe stages, because ultimately you will cap out your bleed DPS, then you're sacrificing defense utility for this helmet slot. In terms of this build, I think it's fine. I think another big point I haven't talked on, and I think I might need to go back now, I just remembered that this guy doesn't have any spell suppression in his build, and also his fire resistance isn't capped. I might be jumping all around the place here, but I'm just pointing out things that I noticed them. So you notice his chest, cold res, chaos res, decent res on his chest, 20 maximum life. So, and he's also got 10% increased maximum life. So most people will think, oh, the 10% increased maximum life, that's great, right? I think in this case, having a flat life roll is much, much more important than having that 10% increased maximum life roll. So if I go to this this glorious leather here, I think what we do is we don't really care about the maximum amount of life. You only really care about this mod if you have a crazy pool of life already. So maybe you have like 3-4k base life. If your base life isn't that high, you're not getting a lot of value from this 10% increased max life. You're better off just getting a high amount of flat life. So what we can do here actually is, let's say we give it these rolls. We don't care about the evasion rating so much. Let's just say this had 120 flat life instead. Yep, okay, so after we've changed the life mod on his armor, we can see his life pool has gone up. His effective hit pool has gone down a little bit. That's because I removed the evasion rating from the armor itself. I think for these type of builds, you want a hybrid armor base, so you want armor and evasion. So Glorious Leather is fine. I think what you ideally want is a Triumphant Lamellar. That's a hybrid armor evasion base, which we both, and also rolls red and green sockets, which is great for our build because we use red and green sockets. I think that's ideally the best armor type, body armor type for our build. So we do want a high amount of armor and we do want a high amount of evasion because we are trying to scale both. Both of them are defensive layers. So we'll go through the rest of the gear quickly. Gloves are fine. Lightning Res, Chaos Res, Bleeding You Inflict does damage 7% faster. These are all decent mods. You could also put Eldritch mods onto this as well, so attacks have increased chance to bleed, and also Fizz Dot over time multi. We can add 2 more rolls to this. His boots, decent life, movement speed, bleeding you inflict deals damage 8% faster. So what I've noticed is this guy has taken a lot of the nodes for bleeding you inflict deals damage 8% faster onto your gear. I think that's not necessarily the best choice, because normally you try to get some defensive things onto your gear, while you also can get offensive mods on like your Eater and your Exarch influence. In this case, I think it might be better just to have a life plus spell suppress roll on the boots with some movement speed and resistances where you can fit it. I'm not sure how much value that 8% bleeding you inflict deals damage 8% faster it does, because the fact of the matter is that isn't technically increasing your total DPS. Your bleed's still going to do the same amount of damage. It's just doing it in a quicker time frame. But when you scale your bleed up to a really, really high amount already, you're not going to really notice that difference. And you're going to have to keep reapplying the bleeds as well. Yeah, so okay, so this amulet is like this is a tragedy. Like considering like how much the rest of his gear costs and some of the other rolls on his gear, this is something you find in Act 3 or Act 4. So we can definitely do better here on the amulet. So straight away we can go for high amounts of flat life. We can anoint the amulet. We can get some resistances onto it. So obviously I think we're crafting the amulet here. I think that amulet is gonna make me cry. We go for a int/dex base amulet because this build is int starved/dex starved for some pieces of gear. So we're going for should be a turquoise? Yeah, turquoise amulet. So this is a turquoise amulet. It gives dexterity and intelligence as its base stat. Just make that a little bit higher, so you get a bit more dex, a bit more int. First thing is we're gonna add life. We're gonna go for at least say 75 life. I think that's pretty reasonable. Then you want to go for some resistances here. This is also where you can get some of your utility mods like Leech, extra stats, resistances, just kind of things that fill out your build. And obviously you can upgrade this to a really strong one later, like Owl's Uprising. But for now, we'll just use just a rare amulet just to simulate more league start conditions and how we get into the league. So let's give this person some resistances first. So he's missing a bit of fire resistance. We'll give him some fire resistance here. We'll also give him some. He's also missing some intelligence, so we can give him a bit of intelligence here as well. Let's go for like a 40% roll on fire res. We can go like 30, and that's fine. Maybe we can craft another mod, so we can go. We can also go for physical attack uses mana. We don't need to have all 4 of these mods together. Finding the specific 4 mods might be kind of difficult. Getting a life plus 2 out of those 3 mods is really, really good. And then obviously we can craft our own one. So we can even craft something that we can add physical damage if we want. We can add, we can also add this. This is also an important mod for our build. So channeling skills have reduced mana costs. So this will make our snipe much cheaper in terms of how it takes for us to channel, because we link snipe to our puncture and it becomes a channeling skill. Having this modifier on both our rings and also on our amulet makes the channels much cheaper, so we can actually hold the channel for much longer. One of the problems with this build is when you do reserve a lot of mana, you don't have a lot of mana to work with. So we want to make the skill cost of our puncture/split arrow as cheap as possible. So let's add this item in now, and we can also anoint it. So what I've done for all my other characters is I've given it charisma, because I think it is one of the best anoints for this build, because you're going to be running a lot of auras, and I think it's effective to reduce the amount of mana you're reserving, so we take as much mana reservation efficiency as possible. I noticed that charisma is an expensive annoyance, so I think you can go for a more budget alternative if you want. There's a couple good nodes you can get on the tree. You can go for I think freedom of movement, that's fine. You get a bit of movement speed. You can even go for I think you can go for a life node as well. You can go for a stat node. Just anoint the amulet with something that'll be useful. In this case, I'll give it charisma because I think that this is by far the best in slot for the build. Obviously, it's an expensive anoint. You wouldn't put it on a cheap amulet, but for this case, we're just going to show why it's important to get a lot of mana reservation on the build. Yep, so his life's gone up a bit. His resistances are almost capped now, but he's still using a flask to cap it, so we'll fix that in a bit. And now we can look at, I think his rings. Yeah, he has the right idea of this one. So non-channeling skills have -7 the total mana cost. You can probably get it on this ring as well. And obviously you want a bit of life on this ring. So prioritize life on your gear and then resistances instead of the other way around. Resolve is fine. You can quality this up with catalysts. Probably a lot of the words I'm saying might not make sense to newer players. I'll be making a video later on to kind of go through the basics for newer players starting PoE. There's a lot of things in PoE that you can go super in depth to. If I were to talk about every single point in this video, it'd probably be like 2 hours, 3 hours long. But for now, catalysts are just a currency item that you get that increases the quality of the item roll itself. So it can amplify the modifiers on an item based on what type of catalyst you use. For example, if you have 90 life on an amulet and you use a life catalyst, you can make that life go up to 100, 120 because you get 20% increased effect of the life modifiers. Same with this, if you run attack modifiers, if you run an attack catalyst on this, it will amplify the effect of the more and less minimum physical attack damage. So I can give you an example here. If we go to his Reslathers, we should be able to add quality to it. Maybe it's not in PoB, but normally is you add 20% quality to the item, and then these rolls will change. So it'll be 20% amplified. So 20% of 30, 31 is about 6, so this will become 37, and then this will become 39. So it'll become like this. So this gives another like 4% more damage to the bleed. This is assuming you've added in the catalyst to it. This item does roll big range. You want to look for a higher, more physical damage range and a less minimum physical damage range. That way, it impacts your damage less. So obviously, you're looking for a 40% more maximum physical and a 30% less minimum physical. But obviously, those are very expensive. That's just a little quick caveat to note when you get these type of items, that the roll on the item does make a big difference to the build. All right, so we've gone over the gear, we've gone over the passive tree a little bit. I probably will go back in a second to talk about spell suppress and how we can fit that in. But getting spell suppress itself is it's definitely a conscious decision you have to make to add in. And if you don't have the currency to really invest into spell suppression, then I think making sure your gear and your gems and your skill tree, your passive tree is stable first, and then slowly pushing for more defense. So we'll go into the skills here. So notice that since we've added so much mana reservation efficiency now, we should be able to add in the defensive aura. So Determination by far should be the best aura. So even here, so the mana reservation has gone down to -4. So we'll see what he's actually running as his auras. So he's running a Malevolence and he's running a Pride, I assume. Yeah, he's running Pride as well. I would say that you run one of the offensive auras. You don't need to run both, especially if you don't have a Watcher's Eye that have the mods for the corresponding item. If you don't know what a Watcher's Eye is, you should be able to look at my Believer video, and I'll tell you what a Watcher's Eye is, and also what you want on the Watcher's Eye. I think we'll get rid of... we'll see. We can see which one gives more damage, right? So let's assume Malevolence is level 20, and we'll also assume Pride is level 20 here. If we turn it off, damage goes to 9.5. If we turn Malevolence off, damage goes to 9.7. So we're going to turn off Malevolence here because it's giving us less damage than Pride, and also Pride is only at initial effect. If we set it to maximum effect, damage jumps up again. So let's get rid of Malevolence into the build. We fit Determination in now, so that's a defensive aura. Hit pool's gone up to 21k, so that's almost getting close to the point of triple the initial effective hit pool. We're also going to add in a Herald of Purity now because we did get rid of a big aura, so we can reserve a smaller one. So we add a Herald of Purity in, and I think we could also add a Dread Banner because Dread Banners are very cheap to reserve, and we're getting a much better damage now as well. So we've got Herald of Purity, Dread Banner, and Determination. We still have a bit of unreserved mana for us to attack with. So I think by dropping the Malevolence, we're able to fit in Determination, Herald of Purity, and Dread Banner. You can also potentially forget Determination, run Herald of Purity, and Dread Banner for pure defense. For pure offense, but I don't think that's really good for this case. You do want a high amount of defense in order to survive red maps and beyond. All right, so I think these are like some decent changes for the build. Everything else seems to be okay. He's manually running vulnerability as a curse. You can get this as a mod on rings, so you can vulnerability curse enemies on hit with a special mod. So you don't technically need this gem here. You can save this gem link for yourself. I don't think Blood Rage is that necessary either, because since you are a gladiator, you're generating frenzy charges on kill, and the way you get that in bosses, I don't know why he has a trap here. So we'll get rid of these. Get rid of these mods here. How you actually want to set up most bow builds now is you have something called a mana forged arrow support. So this will let you automatically trigger certain skills after you spend a certain amount of mana. So we can add in a frenzy support here, so you generate frenzy charges on boss fights, and you also want this skill gem, Ensnaring Arrow. This is, if anything in this video you guys take out from Bleed, note that Ensnaring Arrow is one of the strongest damage multipliers you can get for Bleed Bow. So this guy's running Ensnaring Arrow here on a totem, not really necessary because he's using 4 gem links just to get Ensnaring Arrow. You can just get it off this one mana forward setup. What Ensnaring Arrow does is it makes the enemies count as moving. And if the enemy is moving, Bleed does a hell of a lot more damage to them. Bleed has a crazy multiplier for when enemies are moving. So what Ensnaring Arrows does is when it hits a target, it makes the status count as they're moving. Even if they're not moving, it makes it count like they're moving. So it makes your Bleed do a crazy amount more damage. So the best way to simulate this is you can say Ensnare stacks 1 here. You look for a setting is like if the enemy is moving. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, so this is the actually if the enemy is moving button here. If you untick that, get rid of the Ensnare stacks. The damage goes from 3.5. You tick it on, it goes to 10 million. So it's almost, I think it is triple the damage if the enemy is moving. So this is one of the most important skill gems you can have for Bleed Bow. You have to have this somewhere, either in a totem setup or in a mana forged arrow setup. So this setup will trigger both frenzy and a Ensnaring Arrow, so it will give you the frenzy charges that you need, and it will also give you your big enemies count as they're moving when you hit targets. This is really important for Bleed Bow builds because it's a huge component of your damage, because the boss won't necessarily always move when you're fighting it. Okay, so we've gone over the skill gems. I'll look over look. So this seems to be fine. I think PS is fine as well for Split Arrow. You can go for Chain as well if you want for extra clear. I think it's personally your preference which one you're going to use. And I think Assailum is fine as well if you're on more of a budget. If you do want to run a 6-link puncture setup, you're just going to be adding a snipe in to replicate the Assailum. So you'll be adding a snipe in, and you'll also be adding Swift Affliction. Swift Affliction, either one. That'll be your 6-link setup if you're not running a Assailum. Personally, I don't like running an Assailum because the extra 2 stages that you have to channel for to get your damage, it makes the build feel a little bit more clunky because you're standing there for like what 33% longer just to get the same, just to get your puncture off. If your puncture already hits DOT cap, then that Assailum is essentially a useless item for your build. It just helps you hit the DOT cap quicker. So I think those are the kind of changes you can make for now for the build. The most key things is you want to cap your resistances and you want to scale your armor and your evasion. So I haven't made all the changes in this PoB. When I do send out the PoB to this viewer, I'll make some extra changes. But just for the sake of the video, that's kind of like the core methodology of building a stronger character. Making sure you have a defensive aura, making sure you have defenses shored up, making sure you have a decent life pool. Now, I'll quickly go into if you want to hit spell suppress cap. You get a huge amount of value by hitting like 100% spell suppression or getting close to 100%. If your spell suppression is only half scaled, it's gonna feel really bad sometimes, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, I feel so tanky. Sometimes you get one shot because your spell suppression didn't kick in. So if you are gonna scale spell suppression, you have to go all in. All right. So how we do that on this type of build is we have access to Mage Bane here, which makes our dexterity convert into spell suppress. So I'm gonna quickly rejig this tree here to show you how to actually get to maximum spell suppress. So we probably drop some of these damage nodes here, and then we just go straight for Mage Bane, then we grab reflexes as well. So this will give us a good amount of spell suppress already, and you'll see that our hit pool will go up very quickly after we scale more and more spell suppress. So at 27% chance, there's a mastery as well that gives you 15% additional spell suppress if you have evasion rating on your helmet, body armor, gloves, and boots. That's why I recommend going for a hybrid base for armor and evasion on your gear. So in this case, I don't think this person has evasion on all his gear. So let's quickly change that so he does have evasion. I think it's only his yeah, it's only his gloves that don't have evasion. So for his gloves, we'll just add a little modifier here for evasion. Here, add save. So now you get another 15% spell suppression. You can see his hit pool slowly going up. The other points you can get to get spell suppression, they're down here. There's spell suppression in this cluster here. I think this is decent as well. I think if you do go for spell suppression, you're gonna drop some of the life nodes here. It's really like how you min-max your build. Potentially you could drop these nodes, so you can drop these like 5-6 nodes here. And since we are going at the bottom of the tree, we take 1, 2, 3 here, and we save 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We save 6 points. Potentially we didn't get these points either. We can get like save 8 points here just by rejigging the skill tree a bit, so it's a bit more I guess more streamlined. And now that gives us 7 points to go towards spell suppress. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 88 still. We have how much spell suppress? We have 71% spell suppress. So that's really, really good. I think the hit pool actually isn't going up because we changed some of the life nodes, and also spell suppress is determined on our total life / how much we've taken a hit. I think this number is going to change once you get to 100% spell suppress, because it means you're going to be effectively always capped against spell hits. So how do we cap the rest of the spell suppress? So we get that on your gear now. So we look for, let's say, 18% on your armor, 12% on your gloves. So if we go to your armor here, so this is just a resistance / life one. We can easily add in some spell suppress as well. Maybe we drop some resistances, but I think potentially you can easily get those resistances back in other places. So we're going to add another modifier here. So we're going to add, I believe it's a suffix. Yep, so we're going to add, let's say, 17 to 19% spell suppress. Yep, so we're at 90% spell suppress now. So we're just a little bit off. So we'll add a little bit more to the gloves. We'll get 10% spell suppress on your gloves. Don't worry about all the damage rolls on your gloves. Most of these rolls, you don't really care about. You don't care about the ES, you don't care about the cold damage to attacks. You don't even really care about the bleeding inflict deals damage 7% faster. So I would prioritize spell suppress in this case. So once again, it's a suffix. Yes, so this is also another thing I realized earlier this league. Non-evasion armor bases cannot roll spell suppression. So on a pure armor base or pure energy shield base, you cannot roll spell suppression on the gear. So in this case, this is a energy shield base because it's an Arcanist glove. He actually can't roll spell suppression on this pair of gloves. So what we do in this case is we just get rid of the gloves. So we'll just craft a new item at this point. We'll craft a pair of gloves. We say armor / evasion. Then we're gonna add the mods that we want. So we want maximum life. Set that to like 80. Then we add suppress, and we want at least like 12% on that. That'll cap us out to 100%. We'll get some resistances as well. So we get like let's say fire resistance, because he's missing a bit of fire resistance. Set that at like 35. So this type of glove wouldn't be too hard to find. It's just essentially life plus 1 resistance plus suppress. And then we can also craft our own resistances on the crafting bench. So we just go, let's say, we go lightning resistance, lightning and cold maybe. Yeah, we're lightning and cold. Then we have a new pair of gloves. We pop that into the build. Nice. So we're at 100% chance to spell suppress now. Our lightning res is not capped, so let me potentially change. Yeah, let me potentially change the mod on here so the lightning res is capped, because the number our maximum hit pool went down. Shouldn't be the case. Also, please note, guys, this is a very ad hoc video. It's just me talking through my thoughts on how I would fix the build at a high level. I'm not going into super depth on how to like min-max the build. This is just more of a reference for you guys on like if your build doesn't feel great, how do you kind of fix it? So we're looking for lightning resistance. All right, so lightning resistance should be capped now. Hit pool 24,000, 100% spell suppress. So the main reason why I think the hit pool isn't as good as before is because your total life still is a bit low here. I think what we can do here is we'll add a bit more life on the rest of your gear just to simulate if you do have a good pool of life, what your hit pool can go into. So for this ring, we're going to add in life instead of mana. We don't really care about mana. Even on the base ring itself, like this is, I believe this is like either synthesis. I think it should be synthesis ring. You don't really need a synthesis ring for global physical damage. Just go for a resistance on your ring. It makes it a bit harder for the build if you're trying to get damage on every single other slot of your gear. Try focus on your defenses first and then scale damage instead of going for attack first and then scaling defenses later, because you can't do damage if you're dead. I think that's a big point people miss. So let's just say, where's the crafting bench? Okay, well, crafting bench will add 55 life to this. You'll see the hit pool quickly jump up once we add some more life everywhere. This is life, this is life. This is a little bit of life. These boots have a decent amount of life. Gloves have life now. Chest has life, that's good. Helmet doesn't really have life because you're using an Assailum. I think we go back to the tree then, and maybe we'll just get some more life somewhere. You can also sort by like this. You can sort by what the role you want is. You can look for maximum life on the tree to see where it is life on the tree. Easy access to life is pretty much near your life wheels here. So I think let's just push the character up to let's say 90. We grab a couple more life points here. I think the other point I noticed as well is this guy has some pretty expensive jewels. He's got the Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame for the Slayer. So this is the Bane of Legends. So it lets you get 20% more damage with hits and elements against unique enemies, 10% more damage if you could recently. This is great, obviously, for offense, but I think in our case, we don't really care too much about that. We want more defense. So I highly recommend instead of these two Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh jewels, you go for the Champions one, which gives you Fortitude, which gives you permanent Fortify. I think that's much stronger in terms of the value it gives for your build because you do get defense. So let me just change your Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh here. So we do add in, we'll add in the actual Fortitude here. This is, I think, something I'll go through the video as an option for gladiators to take. So we add this in, and then we add in a corresponding one. So we have Fortitude now, so we're going to change this to Fortitude instead of Bane of Legends. Yeah, so look, so that one change, your hit pool goes up to 32,000 because you have permanent Fortify now. Your hit pool, your life pool is only 4,000. I think so this is only like a quick patch job for your gear. You can get a lot more life on all your gear. You can go for like 90 life on your gloves. You can go for way more life. You can go like maybe 120, 130 life on your chest piece. I would swap Assailum out for a helmet with mana reservation, efficiency, and maximum life. If you're not sure about how to craft these items, I will be making a guide later on for league starting bleed bow, so you can follow along there on how to actually make some of the pieces of gear for the build. But just note that the general rule is for this build, you want to get life, you want to get cap resistances, you want to get your spell suppress to 100%. Then you focus on stuff like mana reservation, efficiency, and your DPS. I think that should be it for this video here. I kind of covered the kind of like the basics on how to kind of round out your character and also how to gear. You shouldn't be focusing too much on buying very specific pieces of gear for your build. You should just be buying good generic pieces of gear that you can later craft or you can upgrade later. So generic pieces of gear are just pieces of gear with life, resistances, spell suppress. I think that's really important for almost like say 80-90% of builds. If you can go from there, then I think you'll have a good time building out the rest of your character. Going for like specific mods like bleed does damage 9% faster, or dot multi, or physical damage on your gear, sure, it gives you more damage, but normally you only go for those upgrades after your character is already very like min-max, like very strong. Only then do you go for those minuscule like damage upgrades that they push your character even further. Even for my character, if you look on all of my gear, I don't have that mod on my gloves. Like pretty much all of my gear is very defensive on my character, and I'll include my own character's PoB inside, so you guys have a reference to what type of gear you're looking for this build. This has kind of been a special video today, guys. I do appreciate the support that the channel's gotten, and obviously with 3.22 coming just around the corner. I'm hoping to make more videos, especially for newer players, hoping to start PoE. If you've come from D4, if you're just looking to try an ARPG for the first time, I'll try cater to both audiences so you have an idea of what to expect in Path of Exile. I really do appreciate you guys watching the video, and I'll be posting a couple more videos in the next coming days. So please, if you want to follow, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.